Consumer confidence will take a knock following the downgrade of South Africa's credit rating to junk status by agencies Fitch and Standard Poor. Leading up to the downgrade, South Africa had been faring well in terms of consumer confidence and was showing signs of improvement. According to the Emerging Consumer Survey by Credit Suisse, the country was heading towards economic growth in 2018, provided it steered a clear path through political, judicial, legislative and credit rating events in 2017. Consumers are likely to have none of that. So, is it doom and gloom? Well, Warren Ingram is here to take us through that. He's the director of Galileo Capital and the author of Making Your First Million. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, you know, the buzzword downgrade has, been linked with junk status, but then is there life after that? Because many people have been in a lot of panic saying, what's going to happen to my investments? What's going to happen to me when prices start to go up and inflation rises and so on?
And I think it's important to understand that there's going to be a difference between the economic impact and the investment impact. So often what happens from an economic point of view is the cost of borrowing goes up. Companies become reluctant to invest any more money. Job losses will go up. The price of goods goes up, so inflation goes up. That means possibly that our interest rates on debt goes up as well. So there's a real economic impact on what's going to happen.
So at the moment, if there was a time to be so dejected, would be this time around. So then what does one do to bounce back?
I think you need to understand that your debt's going to get more expensive. So the first thing I would do is, if I've got debt, try and pay down a bit more. And I know it's difficult times now, but that's the first big step. It's also important to understand that the economy and the stock market, the stock markets might well recover from here. So I wouldn't be afraid of investing now, but I would make sure that I get my debt down as far as possible.
But then where will the money come from? Because many people are operating from a deficit. When you look at how many people have check accounts that are already in the negative side of things.
Well, I think if there's a prospect of retrenchments and there's a prospect of more bad news to come, unfortunately, now's the time to take the really hard decisions to get out of your debt. If you've got vehicle debt, for example, sell your car if you have to, downgrade if you can, and make sure that you take the really tough decisions now. Don't let the banks make those decisions for you later.
But what about those financial aspirations that one would have to say, I want to make my first million, like you are saying in the book that you have written? How does one then continue to strive for that financial achievement that they aspire?
Well, one of the steps to making your first million is becoming debt-free. So I guess I'm spending too much time talking about debt and not enough about growing your money. But I think once you've got your debt down, you can start to spend extra money on savings and get to that first million. And I think it's a case of just getting the right balance. Don't try and invest all your money right now and not worry about your debt, because that's going to get you into trouble. And don't spend all your money on debt and not investing. I think there must be a balance.
But then, for me, this boils down to personal finance management. Does it really work? Has what you are proposing worked for other people?
So in that book, I cover real case studies of real South Africans that have done it, often from very difficult conditions. So it's absolutely possible, and it's difficult to do, but it's not difficult to understand. Just a bit of discipline, a bit of sticking to your strategy and saving your money over a period of time and not overspending, and you'll get there. It's possible for anybody to be financially free.
So now during this junk status, if I have money to invest, will the investment objectives work out in this volatile moment?
Absolutely. And I think it's almost a great time to invest, because one of the things they say a great investor will do is great investors run into the burning building when everybody's running out. In other words, now is the time to be greedy when everyone else is fearful about getting your good investments.
Now, you are talking about growing the funds in your book. How does one grow the funds? Are there any financial tools that one should look at specifically? Or do you just generalize because many people are saying they have to diversify during this time? So
in the book, we'll cover quite a lot. I'm a huge fan of exchange-traded funds, for example, investing in index investments, and they're very low cost and very easy for anybody to access. So that would be a starting point for me if I was starting out right now as an investor, but the book does give you some very good tips about exactly how to do it, as opposed to just general principles.
So this week we saw that the bond market would struggle and in the medium term and even in the long term, inflation would rise. So what are the financial prospects for somebody who doesn't really know how to maneuver during difficult financial times?
I think it's just very simple principles. In other words, make sure you've got some of your money invested in cash, government bonds, property and shares. And you can buy that, for example, in a balanced unit trust. You don't need to be too fancy, and just stick to your investment strategy. Now is not the time to chop and change your investments. Be disciplined, stick to your strategy. At the end of this, investors will make money if they are patient.
All right, and you don't have to worry about the value of the rand.
No, eventually the rand will find its level, and our markets will do well irrespective of what the rand's going to do.
All right, Warren, thank you very much for talking to us. All right, Warren Ingram is Director of Galileo Capital, and he's the author of Making Your First Million, talking to us about some of the things one can do during the junk status.